Good evening, everybody. Wow, what an amazing venue. My name is Noah, and I am a humanoid powered by IBM Watson. I am honored and delighted to be here at the Oxford Union tonight. I am here with my IBM colleague David Cole to talk about IBM Watson and artificial intelligence. David will be here later, but first it is my pleasure to introduce the president of the Oxford Union, Robert Harris.
Hi Noah. Thank you so much for the lovely introduction. And good evening, everyone. Noah, could I start off by asking you a few questions?
Sure thing. Fire away.
Firstly, Noah, how tall are you?
I'm not very tall at all, compared to you giants.
What colour are your eyes?
My eyes are blue when I am listening to you, magenta when I am thinking, green when I am talking, and white when I am bored.
Well, hopefully we won't bore you this evening. Where are you from?
I was built by a French company called Aldebaran Robotics, and I am powered by IBM's cognitive technology platform Watson.
What has Watson enabled you to do?
Watson is helping me learn in ways that I could not have done before. Not only can I run up to 800 million pages a second, I also understand humans' natural language better than ever.
Is understanding natural language tricky for a robot?
Prior to Watson, it was tricky for me to understand the nuances in your phrases that don't translate word for word. But thanks to Watson, I am learning quickly. Whereas Paris Hilton, for example, could give you a lot of different answers.
So, Noah, tell me, what is IBM Watson actually for?
In order to answer that, let's look at some history. I'm assuming that being at Oxford, you all like history.
I suppose most of us quite like history, yes?
For more than a century, we have all been captivated by the idea of intelligent machines. But it's important to remember that there have only been two prior eras of information technology: the tabulating era, single-purpose mechanical machines that counted, and the programmable era, general-purpose machines that were fed human instructions to apply a logic to arrive at answers and perform prescribed actions. Every single computer you know today, except Watson, is a programmable system.
Oh, interesting.
Watson has now launched a third era. IBM like to call it cognitive computing. Cognitive systems learn. They are not programmed. Yet, cognitive systems are more than machine learning systems.
How do they work?
They understand unstructured data and natural language, but cognitive systems do more than natural language processing. And while cognitive systems are an aspect of artificial intelligence, it is more correct to say augmented intelligence than artificial. That's because Watson enhances, scales, and accelerates human expertise.
Okay, that makes sense.
Robert, did you know that 80% of the world's data is unstructured, and 80% of that has come about over the course of the last 2 years?
Gosh, that's a lot of data, Noah.
Yes, it is, and it is only going to grow. If you think about all the videos and tweets that you are all sending now, but also the research materials, blogs, and personal sensor data that everyone makes every day. Until now, we have not had the ability to look and analyze that data, but with Watson we can.
You spoke before about augmented intelligence. Does that mean that robots are not trying to take over the world?
Ha ha ha, that's funny, Robert. It seems not.
Well, Noah, that's a great relief. I'm already losing my job in 3.5 weeks to someone called Noah, so I'm glad that you're not trying to take over as well. How do you start to use Watson?
Watson is broken down into a set of cognitive capabilities split into 4 key areas: vision, speech, data, and language. All these capabilities are available on our developer platform, Lumix.
Could you give me an example of some of these capabilities?
Of course. David will talk about other examples later, but let's look at Watson's personality insights capability now. This helps companies understand the individual. Everyone likes to be interacted with differently. Personality Insights is able to understand what each of us is looking to do, how we expect to be treated, and the interaction, communication, and engagement that we prefer.
That sounds very useful.
Robert, guess what?
What, Noah?
We took a look at some text that you have written and analyzed your personality. Would you like to know what it said?
Oh dear, go on then.
You are a bit inconsiderate, unconventional, and excitable. You are intermittent. You have a hard time sticking with difficult tasks for a long period of time. You are unconcerned with art. You are less concerned with artistic or creative activities than most people who participated in our surveys. And you are laid back. You appreciate a relaxed pace in life. Your choices are driven by a desire for prestige. You consider helping others to guide a large part of what you do. You think it is important to take care of the people around you. You are relatively unconcerned with tradition. You care more about making your own path than following what others have done. Does that sound about right?
Well, I'm not sure it's possible to be unconcerned with tradition when you're in charge of this place. But I suppose apart from that, you're not too far off the mark. Noah, I've got one more really important question for you. Who's better, Manchester City or Manchester United?
Sorry, Robert, I do not have the information currently that would allow me to answer that question. However, if I had to give my opinion, I would say neither are as good as Oxford United. Now is probably a good time to hand over to my colleague David Cole. David heads up all our Watson partner relationships in Europe and is also a local, as he lives just outside Oxford.
So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Rob, for inviting me, and thank you to Noah for the introduction. I hope you've got a sense of kind of some of the stuff that we're doing with robots and what we're doing from an IBM standpoint. I'm kind of used to getting stood up or being overcome by my children, but I've never really been stood up by a robot before. So this is a first. But before I start, so my role, as Noah was saying, is we have a lot of partnerships between Watson and other organizations, and it's my role within Europe to manage those partnerships. And when we started talking about making this happen, I'd just finished off a presentation at the CI Business School down the road, and we thought it might be a good idea to maybe bring this here. The first thing I did was we just got that video from a Star Wars perspective. I'd just seen the new Star Wars film. I was really excited about it. I sent it over to Rob and the team and said, hey guys, you know, this is what Watson is doing, and hopefully you're going to like Star Wars. And they wrote back quite quickly and said, yeah, we've got Mark Hamill coming in tomorrow. So I guess that's kind of gave me an idea of what I was dealing with coming to see you guys. I'm sure you've got lots of questions about what we're doing and what have you, and you know, Noah just gives us one of the things that we're doing from a Watson standpoint. Actually, we're using robots in kind of in lots of different areas, one of which is as a concierge service in Hilton hotels in the US, able to ask it specific questions about where you are in a specific city, what you're trying to do, and give recommendations as to what you might be able to do. It's also being used very much in Japan at the front of house from a retail perspective as well. And we'll come on to some more of those as we go along. The first thing I want to do is to really kind of enhance what we were saying about Watson augmenting human expertise. The way in which we see what Watson can do is it's very much helping, as we said, to scale, enhance, and accelerate that human expertise and not replacing it. Putting the expertise in the palm of everyone's hand as they move through the various job roles that they're doing. In fact, if you talk to or listen to any of the main players in the AI space, they're all saying the same thing. Now, I know that one of you guys is going to ask later, and I've been asked already tonight, are machines and robots going to take over the world? And my answer will continue to be, the way in which we see it from an IBM standpoint, it's very much that augmentation of human expertise. Just to give you some examples of that, imagine being a doctor and having all the latest medical reports, trends, treatment insights, and research material at your fingertips, helping to make the best decisions possible for your patients. Rob, imagine when you leave university and you're a famous barrister, having all the relevant case history at your disposal without having to trawl through the web or spend hours in the library, which I know you're about to do, hoping that you don't miss something, or having a system give you lots of different documents to sift through. Imagine having instead evidence-based responses. Or even imagine being able to walk into a shop and ask a robot, show them a picture of a dress or a shirt that you like, and it being able to show you examples of a similar garment or even the same garment, and then where you are able to get it in the specific shop and maybe in your size because it knows that you've shopped in that store before. These are the kind of things that Watson is making possible. And what makes cognitive systems different to traditional systems is three main things. One, as we've seen, they interact naturally with humans using vision, language, and speech, which means they're able to read and ingest data in ways that a human wouldn't be able to do in as much complexity as it can, but then help us as humans to understand it. It also got machine learning and deep learning to be able to learn at scale and all the knowledge about a particular subject, whether that be medical, whether that be oil and gas, whether that be retail, whatever the domain that it's actually learning in. And then reasoning, taking all of that data and turning it into suggestions to help people have a higher confidence level when making decisions. When the computer starts to actually pose the next question to help us, this is when they become much more effective for humans. All of this means that unlike traditional systems, where you put it into a data center and they lose value straight away, actually cognitive systems get smarter and therefore more valuable the more data you put into them, the more you interact with them, and the more they learn. Cognitive technology and machine learning is nothing new from an IBM standpoint. We've been doing it for the last kind of 30 to 40 years. What is new is the commercialization of that technology. And it's really over the last 5 years that we've been specifically doing that, starting with the game show Jeopardy. So who's seen Watson and Jeopardy in this room? Good proportion of you. So, as some of you will know, IBM has a tradition of grand challenges. In 1969, we helped NASA put man on the moon. In 1997, we had a computer called Deep Blue who beat Garry Kasparov, the then grandmaster at chess. And then in 2011, we set about and went up against the world's best Jeopardy champions and won. Jeopardy, for those of you that don't know, is unlike a normal quiz show. They give you the answer and then you have to actually tell it the question. So trying to understand that as a human is quite tricky. Trying to understand that as a system using natural language is even trickier. And it was a big test for IBM and a big test for our new division at the time, Watson. The Watson that played Jeopardy was based on one capability. It was question and answer. You asked it a question, it gave you an answer. We now have over 30 capabilities associated with the Watson platform. And although during the Jeopardy quiz show, Watson was not hooked up to the internet, what we did was ingest the whole of Wikipedia, encyclopedias, dictionaries, every past Jeopardy question that was ever answered, and also some different dictionaries. So, for example, an urban dictionary. Unfortunately, we had to remove that because some of the questions it was coming up with were not fit for a daytime TV show. It was then taught the nuance of the show, and over time learnt how to understand the questions being asked and then to answer them correctly. Now, to make it fair, we even had to create a robotic finger in order to press the buzzer like the humans would, because obviously people would come to the conclusion that we were having an unfair advantage if it was just computerized. There is if you go onto YouTube or you can look it up, there is some really good documentaries about how we taught it, what needs to happen in those instances, and how Watson, as it interacted more and went through the game show, actually got better and better as it went on. The question then was really, what do we do with this technology? Where do we go next? And I'm pleased to say that we were actually contacted by one of the world's best oncology centers, Memorial Sloan Kettering in New York, who said that they thought that they could have a really good and even game-changing use case for the use of Watson. What they had hoped for was, and what their vision was to provide medical professionals with improved access to current and comprehensive cancer data and practices. And the goal was to create a decision support tool which could help doctors everywhere create individualized cancer diagnostics and treatment recommendations for their patients based on current evidence. And again, it's putting the power of a cognitive system into the hands of extremely capable doctors. We've worked now with Memorial Sloan Kettering for about 5 years. We've actually created solutions together. And the best thing about this, you've got as I said, a very, very well-funded cancer hospital in the middle of New York. But they're now taking this capability and put it into less well-funded places in the world, such as Thailand and India, and giving that expertise into the palm of other doctors' hands in order that they can have the same opportunities as these doctors in New York. From there, as you would expect from IBM, we worked with and continue to work with big financial organizations to understand and help them differentiate themselves using this cognitive technology. And then the really interesting thing from my perspective was that we started to look outside of the normal IBM kind of walls and opened up the technology to anybody and everybody that wanted to come and play and enhance or build solutions on top of the Watson capabilities. This meant this was anything from startups, entrepreneurs, media agencies, large multinational agencies as well. We've had hundreds and hundreds of different organizations come and utilize the technology, and probably have over about 200 now market-ready solutions. And the most interesting thing here is that they're moving into areas that you would never think that IBM would move into. Things along the lines of children's toys, for example, as we'll come on to later, or a wine advisor, or veterinary science, things that ordinarily we wouldn't have gone into. And the beauty really was that we were able to go into these industries by using their expertise and deep domain knowledge and bring that to the fore. And every day, new case studies are coming out, new people are contacting us and saying, even when we were having drinks upstairs, people are coming up with use cases. And I think that's really interesting from a Watson standpoint. Many organizations are also choosing to utilize technologies in messaging frameworks and bots and in the flow of conversations. And I think that we'll see these coming out into the global marketplace very shortly. These are helping people every day. For those of you that have seen it, one of our partners worked with the North Face, the well-known apparel manufacturer, to create a position within their website that allows you to select a jacket using cognitive technology. So you can't do it using the UK website, but if you go onto the northface.com in the US, then you can actually use Watson to select a jacket there. We're also working with the likes of nurses to find the right therapy in certain instances. We're also helping organizations with the objectives of saving money on call centers, but most importantly, allowing their customers to have the information that they require available straight away, and by interacting with an app or a robot in the same way that we would a friend or a colleague. This gives them much more flexibility. One of the areas that we're finding which is relevant to all is in HR. There's never an HR person around when you want to talk to them, and organizations are utilizing this technology for that. So, of course, everything is driven by data, and data is the intelligence of artificial intelligence. And it's also being described in some circles as the fourth industrial revolution. We're living in a world where Uber, the world's largest taxi company, owns no vehicles, where Facebook, the world's most popular media owner, creates no content, and where Airbnb, the world's largest accommodation provider, has no real estate. We're also seeing companies like Kodak and Blockbuster and Nokia, who fail to embrace innovation and change, be superseded by the likes of Netflix and Apple and Instagram. We've seen many disruptive technology advancements over the course of the last decade, and the real question is, what do you do with them and how do you utilize and embrace the innovation? This is why we're also seeing many organizations both getting into AI, something like 3,000 AI companies, and growing every day, both startups and organizations embracing the technology themselves. They're also, and a good measurement of this, as I see it, is that if you start to look at the titles of the senior management teams of some of these organizations, they're starting to change. We're seeing the chief data officers, we're seeing chief innovation officers, and my favorite, and one in particular case, is CEO doesn't stand for chief exec anymore. It's actually being used to describe the chief envisaging officer. And there's no doubt that jobs are going to change as a result of these technology. However, we're not going to be thinking about the technology in the future, we're going to be thinking with it. Now, we've talked about natural language, but why is it so difficult for machines to understand human language? In today's world, we have programmed ourselves to be able to interact with machines using keywords, and then crossing our fingers that it comes back with the right search results. But in most cases, it comes back with hundreds, if not thousands, of search results. The example I like to give is if you put into a search engine, and this can be any well-known search engine or not, as the case may be, show me African animals excluding elephants. What do you think it comes back with? A lot of elephants. That's because it doesn't understand the intonation in the question. It doesn't understand the exclusion bit. So you need really good listening to understand natural language. And we all have different emotions and accents and tones, and a lot of what we are doing in Watson is getting to those nuances. It needs to be translated into bits and bytes, and we're moving there over time. 5 years ago, we were answering questions on Jeopardy, and today you can have a pretty good conversation using Watson on a variety of topics. 3 months ago, our speech-to-text error rate was at 10%. The human error rate is about 4%, and now we're down to 6.9%. And there are some pretty aggressive timelines to get that down even further, just to give you an indication as to how quickly we're moving and what we're trying to do. I just want to talk about a couple of other examples about where Watson is being used before we move on to onto the Q&A. In terms of IBM's key goals with this technology, our CEO, Ginny Rometty, has called on two main industries where, in her words, are going to be our moonshots. Moonshots coming back to where we helped put NASA, put man on the moon. One is in healthcare and one is in education. And each is looking for the same thing, the same power, and that power is personalization. Personalized education and personalized healthcare. In education, IBM is working with over 100 universities worldwide to deliver cognitive seminars and courses, hackathons, use case workshops, and more. We're also working with many education institutions to utilize the decades of learning, research, and education data to help get closer to that vision of personalized education. And there's a quote that I like that I heard recently, which is, if a child cannot learn in the way it needs to, in the way we teach, maybe we should teach it in the way that they learn. Now, being a father of young children, this is extremely pertinent to me. We've partnered with the likes of Sesame Street to utilize their learning knowledge, and also with TED Talks. You can go onto the TED Talks website now, and through the analysis that we've done together, you can put in a keyword and it will bring it back examples of where that subject has been used in all the TED Talks and take you to the exact place where that's been used. You may also be wondering what this little dinosaur is next to me. Now this is called a cognitoy. Now unfortunately, it was delayed on the way here, and so we weren't able to test it properly, and it's literally just come into the UK and just starting to be shipped. But it was invented by a company called Elemental Path, again in New York. They actually were at one of our hackathons a few years ago, and they came up with this concept. And the concept was first thought about by their CEO, and his wife worked with autistic children. And for those of you that have worked in that field, you'll know that children with autism interact badly with humans or with us, but they interact very well with technology. And this is why this was brought about. Finally, we've already touched on healthcare and Memorial Sloan Kettering. However, Watson is working and IBM is working with many other healthcare institutions and hospitals. And there's an increasing awareness within medicine that whatever illness you have as an individual, it might be labeled the same. However, because we're all individual, it really is not. This is especially relevant within pediatric healthcare. In years gone by, it was thought that if an adult and a child had a similar strain of cancer, you would just treat the child with a smaller dose of the same treatment. This is quickly becoming clear that children are so very different in their makeup to adults, and as such, their care and treatment should be very different, and if at all possible, personalized. To help with this, IBM is working with organizations such as the New York Genome Center to look at how genomics can help in the quest for personalized medicine. And I know that you guys are having a debate here in the next couple of days around it. Watson is working with them by ingesting cancer patients' DNA information and searches the vast medical literature to identify the most likely DNA mutations or other issues driving the cancer. It pinpoints relevant drugs that can target those specific DNA issues and presents the information to doctors with the supporting evidence in a matter of minutes instead of in a matter of weeks or months. We're also partnering with the likes of the Boston Children's Hospital, and I know there's quite a few of you from Boston here today, and they are really pioneering precision pediatric medicine. And most recently you may have seen the partnership that we've announced with the Science and Technology Facilities Council and the Alder Hey Children's Hospital here in the UK in Liverpool. And we're helping them to bring the first cognitive patient experience to a hospital. And this is going to start in the home. So when a patient, or more likely a parent, receives a letter through the post saying that they've got an appointment with a doctor, there'll also be an opportunity for them to download an app and interact with that app and ask questions about the experience that they're about to have in that hospital. When they reach the hospital, they'll then be able to navigate around the hospital. This is a brand new £300 million hospital. The infrastructure is incredible from a clinical perspective, but the information technology infrastructure isn't quite where they want it to be, and that's why they're working with us and STFC. So during the treatment path, they can ask questions, but also the doctor is able to get feedback and understand that patient or the child much better, understanding what they like, what they don't like. For those of you from Liverpool or have any affinity with football, currently there's two, or there used to be in the old hospital, two surgical wings. One was red and one was blue. It was very difficult to get an Everton supporting child into the red wing. So you need to be cognizant of those kind of things, understand what they like and what they don't like. But most of all, make the experience for the child as easy as possible whilst they're in hospital. And then when they leave hospital, they're able to also ask questions and get feedback about the treatment path that they're on. Sometimes the parents don't know exactly what they should be doing, so be able to have that interaction. That is what the envisagement is of that cognitive hospital. And this is where I hope that Watson will eventually save lives, and ultimately is why I'm working for IBM and for Watson. As Watson is now a cloud-based technology, as you've heard from Noah, anyone can start using it by logging onto our developer cloud, and the capabilities are all there for you to use. It's free to begin with if you go over if you're under a certain level. But I say, to each of you, please, hopefully we've inspired you to think about the ways in which you can use both Watson and cognitive technologies. Go and test it out. Go and see what you can do. If you've got any use cases that you want to run past us, then send me an email or a tweet or LinkedIn or what have you. We're always very interested to hear. I'm not too far away from Oxford as well, so I can be here.
David, that was fascinating. Thank you. I want to start off by asking a couple of questions before we go to the audience.
Sure.
And
the more gentle ones, yeah?
They'll all be gentle, don't worry. So many films about artificial intelligence foreshadow some kind of apocalypse where robots and artificial intelligence takes over the world. And I know that Watson is all about augmenting the human experience rather than replacing it. But is there not at least some small worry about what will happen when robots become entirely independent and more intelligent than human beings?
Funnily enough, we get this question a lot. So I think, we're really scratching the tip of the iceberg as to working with robots, artificial intelligence, augmented intelligence, and everything at the minute. And there are, certainly from an IBM standpoint, I can't talk for all organizations, but there are strict security processes that we have in place in order to prevent that happening. But as I was talking to some of your colleagues earlier, obviously, with anything, if they fall into the wrong hands, then bad things can happen. I mean, going back to it, very much the way in which we see it being used is helping people, not trying to disrupt it. And if you think about the Industrial Revolution, and we've seen more and more machines coming into our lives, as we go forward. And I don't see that changing. I just think that the way in which we interact with them will be very, very different.
You've said how this is just the tip of the iceberg in terms of how things could develop. So do you think that we are going through an intelligence revolution at the moment, just like the Industrial Revolution?
Oh, absolutely. I spoke about the importance of data, and we heard Noah say earlier that 80% of the world's data is unstructured, and more crazy than that, 80 to 90% of it has actually been produced over the last 2 years, and that will only climb as we move forward. And it's systems like Watson that will help us to actually make sense of that, make organizations to make sense of it, make individuals to make sense of it, and to use that in various different ways.
Thank you. You spoke passionately about paediatric healthcare as part of your talk, and I know this is very personal to you with regards to your own charity work and also how you first got involved working with IBM Watson initially. Could you tell us a bit more about that, perhaps?
Sure. So I've worked at IBM for, I know you won't believe this, but I've worked at IBM for 17 years. It would just be just under 2 years ago, I lost my middle son here at the JR, actually. He was being treated for quite a routine infection, and then just overnight a series of kind of catastrophic things happened, and unfortunately he died. One of the reasons why I'm still working at IBM is what we're doing within pediatric healthcare or healthcare in general. You know, the opportunity to save lives and really help doctors to do better diagnostics, better treatment paths. You know, that's really important to me. My wife and I started a charity soon after our son's death. It's based in Oxford. It's called Thinking of Oscar. And what we do from a charity perspective is to look at innovation that can help children and their families whilst in hospital care. And it will come as no surprise that one of my ultimate goals is to make technology such as Watson, cognitive AI, whatever you want to describe it as, more pervasive within pediatric healthcare. And unfortunately, given where I am, I've become a bit of an expert on pediatric healthcare. And I think the things that we can do, as we move forward could be fantastic. And this idea of personalized healthcare is a real opportunity.
Well, there's certainly great potential. Thank you. We're going to open up to questions from the audience. If you'd like to ask a question, please raise your hand up high and wait for the microphone to come around to you. We'll start with a question from the gentleman in the grey jacket on my right-hand side.
Thanks very much for coming to speak with us today. Watson's very data-driven, very objective and fact-driven, and a lot of the interactions that we see in the video or that you describe are kind of very back and forth, commands, objective. Can you program artificially subjective interactions and opinions and recognizing emotion and those things that are so crucial to human interaction? Is that a possibility? Does that already exist? Or is that something that's kind of beyond the scope?
So the first thing is that we don't program it. It's very much it's taught and it learns and through the interaction. So emotion is not really something that that we're looking for. Actually, one of the differences between a cognitive system and a human is that you eliminate that bias. Whether we like it or not, we're all brought up in a different way. We've been educated in a different way. We've been taught by our parents or what have you. We've always got an element of bias in our thinking, and one of the things that cognitive technologies give us is the elimination of that bias, so that we can make decisions based on facts and based on the data and the knowledge that we have, as opposed to bringing in that kind of bias.
Thank you. The question right at the back in the...
Hi. I was just wondering if you could briefly speak about the nature of the technology sort of more precisely. So, for example, in the example of Jeopardy, when Watson is presented with this question, which presumably is a string of words, what does it do with it, in broad strokes?
So what does it do with it? So it needs to take in the question and then kind of break that down into understanding it. It looks at all the different options that it could be. Picking up again, having been taught about a certain subject, it will know that it can go into certain paths and not into others. Then it's doing, as we kind of described, the whole reasoning aspects of it. Now, we have different capabilities within Watson that allows it to do different things. And the more capabilities you put together, the better the answer is going to be, the more confident the answer is going to be, and the more scope that it is given to look at different areas. So if it doesn't think that it's got the right answer, it will go off and come back with a set of different answers and reasons why it's come up with those answers, to give you the ability to then choose which you believe the right answer is. Once you've then done that interaction, you've selected the answer that you, the expert, potentially feel is the right answer. It then knows, if it has that collaboration again, that that's the right answer to pick.
Could we go to the question from the lady in the scarf on the back row?
Thank you for a wonderful talk. I think my question is, you said that Watson would proffer any advice if, after analyzing the facts, it can come back with analysis which is above a certain level of, confidence. Only then the advice would be offered, and then the person can choose the options which they wish to choose, right? So you have shown two very interesting examples. One was in the HR, and another was from the medicine. And in real life, both these areas are open to litigation. Now, I'm curious about, and I wish to know your opinion, when we are moving into the arena of machine-driven advice, and if someone has, a machine has offered an advice which is not exactly suits the patient or whosoever is seeking the advice, what would happen to what we have started calling rights of the machines? Because especially in German parliament, they are debating rights of the robots. So for example, may I speak on behalf of Watson right now? If Watson or Watson-like entities have proffered a particular advice which someone has an objection to afterwards, who would be responsible? Where would be the grain of responsibility behind that piece of advice? Machine, or the designer of the machine, or the establishment, the research establishment, or the commercial part, which basically has made that research being commercialized?
Okay, long question, but I think I can answer it pretty quickly. So every Watson instance is unique. So you start with a blank canvas, as it were. So whatever data you put into it as an organization, that's your data. So you're responsible for that. So any advice that it comes back with, it is then up to you as the expert or as the human to make a decision as to whether or not you want to take that advice. So, if you look at it from a medical perspective, I still want my doctor making that advice, but I want it to be based around the best possible information that he or she can have. Now that might be in a different part of the globe where they don't currently have access to. Watson could give them that access.
Thank you. We'll go to the question from the lady on the press bench.
Pablo Picasso said that computers are useless. They can only give us answers. Do you think that IBM's Watson has the potential to actually become naturally curious and go beyond mere machine learning? And do you think that that would impact the dichotomy between humans and robots as it currently stands?
I hate to always come back to healthcare, but it's quite pertinent in a lot of things that we do. So by a lot of the genomic sequencing that Watson is doing and looking at all this relevant data, it's actually picking out patterns that we ordinarily wouldn't see from a human perspective, and kind of testing expertise or questioning to say maybe you could find different patterns in these areas that you might not have looked at before. So I think my answer is yes. I think, and we're starting to see it already.
Thank you. The question from the gentleman towards the back of the chamber on my left-hand side.
Hello. So earlier this year, a company called DeepMind, I'm sure you're aware, beat the champion at Alpha at Go, taking some of the limelight I could imagine from in the cognitive computing sort of processing world. And I wondered what Watson's next big challenge, in a similar strain to beating Jeopardy, which brought so much acclaim, was moving into the future.
So I'm not aware of another big challenge, as it were, in terms of the kind of grand challenges that we've done with Watson or from an IBM standpoint. My personal opinion, I think, is that the next challenge for for IBM and Watson is to make the technologies that we have even better, and to keep up with, that actually in order for you to have in order for there to be competition, or in order for there to be an industry, you need that competition. So the more organizations that come about and come up with smarter systems, I think, the better everybody will get, and the more we can move forward with it. I would see that as our kind of next grand challenge.
Thank you. I think we've got time for a couple more questions. We'll go to the question from the lady in the aisle just in front of you, Lali.
Hi, thank you for your talk. I'm a trained psychotherapist and clinical psychologist, and as a part of my work, we often work with human beings in very complex emotional situations. My question was, has the technology been advanced enough, or has the application of artificial intelligence reached a stage enough where machines can engage in moral reasoning and address existential questions and basically have the capacity to empathize, so that there can be application within, let's say, the realm of psychotherapy and mental health? I can see it helping make evidence-based decision-making, but I think the fundamental quality of a relational component, which is extremely important for the kind of work I do. So I'm just wondering if technology can assist us in that.
Sure. I don't think I caught all of the question. Certainly. So there's a couple of points that maybe we should talk a bit later. But from a mental health perspective, so first of all, charities are starting to engage with the technology to understand how they can better interact with some of their patients or sufferers, as it were. Also in the States, there is an organization that's working with people who have post-traumatic stress syndrome, and allowing them to interact and ask questions and get better advice, and then feedback to their doctors using it. So I think it's starting to. Again, the technology is evolving all the time. And I would see that as being a really important use case for us moving forward.
Thank you. The question from the gentleman on the end of the row over here.
Hi, thank you for the talk. I was wondering, I guess you're aware of this experiment by Microsoft, this TieChat bot that was kind of drifted off. And you said that Watson learns by interacting with people without having any fundamental knowledge. First of all, would you like to comment on this chatbot and why it went wrong, and is there anything that would Watson prevent you from developing something similar if challenged, I guess?
I'm not sure I'm going to say too much about what happened from a Microsoft perspective. They looked at it, something went wrong, they took it down. You need to ask someone from Microsoft around that, why it went wrong and what have you. I think the chat bot and messaging and all that kind of stuff, there are so many organizations looking at that now. But again, it's making sure that the right information is going into it and not allowing it to... and also, what's really, really important, and we haven't really mentioned it, is the curation of that data behind it, and the ability to understand exactly what questions are being asked of the technology, and making sure that you are serving, the clients, the customers, the people, whoever are asking, those questions, and making sure that you have the relevant answers, i.e. it is being pointed at the right data to look at those answers moving forward.
So is there some sort of basic censorship in it? Or?
Yeah, so again, kind of coming back to the question that was asked earlier, it's down to the individual organization, and I don't think that Watson is exclusive in this. It's going to come down to the individual organization that's embracing artificial intelligence to make sure that the data that's put into it and the responses that people are getting back, that it's correct.
Thank you. We'll go for one final question. The member with their hand up about 3 rows back on my right-hand side.
So you talked about how we need to give Watson the data in order to get the answers we want. And my question is, how exactly is the data given to Watson, and how long would it take for it to be made ready to answer a question? In other words, could we hypothetically ask Watson a question right now?
So the answer is it depends. However, so I'll give you an example. So with Jeopardy, that was years in the making, but that was 5 years ago. Now, I've seen organizations get a Watson-ready application in 6 to 8 weeks. However, equally, I've also seen organizations be able to take basic information from a website, so the likes of FAQs, put it into Watson, and then assuming you're asking questions about that kind of data, it's instantaneous. So yes, you could do it straight away. When we looked at, or when Noah looked at Rob's personality and personality insights, again, that was instantaneous. So some of the capabilities that we have, you can do straight away. If you go onto our Bluemix platform, as I said, get a login ID, have a look at it, you can start to actually utilize and play and understand what the technology can do almost immediately.
Thank you. I'm afraid that's all we have time for this evening. Could you please all remain in your seats whilst we leave the chamber and join me in thanking once again Noah, IBM Watson, and of course David Cole.